people listening, if you haven't been to an Ulster final in Clonus, make it your business to try and get there.
Hello, I'm Michael Verney and welcome along to the Indo GAA podcast with thanks to AIB. AIB is at the heart of Gaelic games across both club and county, and in 2025 they're celebrating a decade of sponsoring the All-Ireland Senior Football Championships. With this year's championship shaping up to be one of the most competitive in years, AIB is more excited than ever to bring fans closer to the action. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more. Delighted to be joined for our football chat by Dick Clerkin. Dick, great weekend of football. Isn't it great to say it? And we're saying it on a more regular basis now.
Here, listen, and that's coming from people with no real skin in the game. But those counties, like you're exhausted watching these games. It was Galway Mayo the week before and two crackers at the weekend, and you just get completely engrossed in them, like as a spectacle. And yeah, I know I was listening to the guys yesterday on the other Indo podcast going through the rules and how this contributed to it. But like you look at Clonus, like I grew up going to Ulster finals as a young fella, working in the Paragon bar when it was in its heyday days, on Ulster final days. It's such an occasion. And have you ever been, like, actually?
I was there.
Been up to many?
I was at the wrong Ulster final. I was at Donegal and Fermanagh. Now, it was still a great occasion, but the game didn't live up to it. It was over after 20 minutes. But even Dick, walking down the road going into Clonus, you're like, because I wouldn't be the most punctual, as you well know from the start of these podcasts from time to time. So I left it quite late and I pulled in to get a bit of food, and I was like, 40 minutes before throwing, like I parked about 4 miles away, I'd say, and ended up kind of running. But like you see the scene coming in, it's something else.
It is, like, and I've like just such vivid memories, like from Anna Street, and for people listening, if you haven't been to an Ulster final in Clonus, make it your business to try and get there over the next 5 years, because unfortunately there is still plans afoot to develop Casement Park, and that might be a thing of the past. But like, it's one of those unique sporting occasions that there's very few of them like that in Ireland. People sort of say that the hurling final in Thurles is the only sort of comparison, and so that how would you say, that atmosphere, that anticipation, that's always there. But sadly, over the last number of years, you haven't got the games, but then when you get the game that feeds into it, just becomes this absolute, and the colour, the noise, like there's a great amphitheatre. It's sort of down under the ground a wee bit. There's a massive atmosphere in it, and it just sort of contributes to what was an amazing spectacle on Saturday evening.
Just on that, Dick, modern renovated grounds are brilliant, right? And they are. But can be something a little bit sterile about them, and it can take away a buzz or an atmosphere. Clonus is not, you would say, be honest, it's not the most modern facility, but it just, the noise in there, like it leads perfect to building into a brilliant occasion before a ball is even kicked.
No, my first Ulster final, I was privileged enough to play in 5 Ulster finals, like 1, 2, probably left a few behind, but I'll never forget the first Ulster final we played. It was in 2007 against Tyrone, and that was all I was Celtic Tiger, things were good, and there was a 35,000 capacity in Clonus, down to 28 now, just with the terraces and health and safety, and I'd say it was 2-1 Monaghan. And I'll never forget, I'd never experienced the roar and the noise coming out on the field, to the point that it shook me. It did. It sort of knocked me back on my feet for the first 10, 15 minutes. I remember saying to Drew Wiley when we went back there in 2010, I put earbuds in my ears. I said, Drew, maybe do the same, because the noise, if you've never experienced before, it might just sort of knock you back on your heels, and it is. And
you're like a horse going down to the start, a buzzy horse, and they put the earplugs in.
Problem is, they put fucking blinkers on me as well for the first 10 minutes. But it was, and I remember all those days of it. And again, obviously the ones you win, you have the after of it, but even just the build up, and you were. It has got dated. Clonus needs a lot of money, and they are spending money on the seating and that, and it's, unfortunately, the capacity has had to be reduced on the terraces because of crowd control and all the rest. And but yeah, it lends itself to a great match, and people, supporters, not the players feed off it, the managers feed off it, even on the stand. Like everyone's so close, and in close proximity, you can hear what people are shouting in and saying in from the sideline, and then obviously the supporters coming on the pitch. Now there's other issues, there's safety issues and crowd control issues that are starting to rear its head, that doesn't lend itself to places like Clonus, especially on Saturday evening matches, where people are enjoying the sort of the throes
In
of
the
summer,
Paragon.
the Paragon, it's and all the rest. So, they're starting to creep in, which is a wee bit of a concern. I'm sure you're like me, you've seen plenty of videos knocking about social media of stuff. That's a concern going forward, I think, for the GA, if that's going to creep into our games. But anyway, we'll not get into that if we don't have
to. We might in a minute.
We might touch on it.
But just on the actual football action, like. And I know you'd have some people saying negatively, like that there's a hell of a lot of hand passing or whatever. That's kind of always, that's the way the game is now, but there's obviously loads of kicking for points from 2-pointers, etc. It's faster, it's better to watch. Like that was some game the other day. Like that was end to end. You didn't know what was going to happen at various stages.
Yeah, and a good testament to how good a game is or fast moving. I went to watch it back again just to, sometimes you're watching a game and you miss bits and you watch it back and repeat, and sometimes you can sort of fast forward through the sterile bits. In the second half, there was very few times you could fast forward anything. It was every time there was a score, ball was back out, kicked, contested around the middle, fast attacks. Yeah, there was a couple of periods, especially we'll come to that in the end, when maybe Armagh allowed Donegal the possession too long when they had to push out, but they were few and far between. And in the round there was a lot of great play and a lot of excitement. That's what you want. When you're watching the game, Mike, that you're sort of anticipating. You're not sure what's going to happen next. You're on the edge of your seat. That's what that was. And even with the short passages of play, they're almost the exception now. As before, it was just from the first minute right through, it was the norm, and it was the breakaway plays and the fast plays were the exception. So I think that nobody's really complaining now with the some of the short passages of play, because they're thankfully starting to die out.
But even that, Dick, they're not machines either. They can't, with the way the rules have changed the game, you can't just go like that the whole time. Like, it is predominantly that, but there are bound to be lulls. But we need to talk about Mr. Murphy. I was down in Nolan Park. I caught all of the first half and then was able to watch the second half back later. But like that almost hand of God catch in the first half.
Catch,
amongst many other little bits and pieces that he did. Like what a story to be, sitting on your Todd for 2 years and then to come back and be man of the match in an Ulster final.
It's actually remarkable, and I suppose because you just sort of associate Michael Murphy, Jim McGuinness, Donegal, Ulster finals, it's just, wash and repeat, go again. But he was gone, he was retired. Yeah. Albeit prematurely, we can say that now, but that doesn't happen. Yes, players on occasion do come back. I'm struggling to think of too many examples of someone coming back to have such an impact, and who knows where the season ends. They're now arguably front runners, or very close to it, Galway possibly on Kerry for the All Ireland. Jesus, if they go the whole way, I don't know. There's a bloody Netflix series in it. Never mind a chat and a podcast. We'll get to the game itself. I was surprised that Armagh were a bit maybe naive and maybe not prepared for his influence. And how even as the game went on, that they didn't do something about it. But for him as a player, we talked about it when he first sort of came back on the scene at the start of the year, how fit he looked. He obviously put in a huge amount of work in the off season. That is now starting to pay dividends. He's got through that's his 4th Ulster Championship game. There was no guarantee he was going to get through all of those. There was no guarantee that the legs were going to be there. He had to get the pre-season work to get in, to allow himself to be available for selection. He had to get through those games, and he was relatively quiet. In those games, there was glimpses of his brilliance and impact, but you would never say in any of those games he completely dominated or controlled to the extent that he did on Saturday. And that was vintage Murphy circa 2012, 13, 14, when he just commanded games. But at the same time, Armagh shouldn't have allowed him to do that. I thought that was the losing of the game, really, for Armagh, because Vinnie Corey, remember Vinnie was on the Sunday game on Saturday night. I don't know if you caught him, Mike. So Vinnie Corey marked Michael Murphy for 3 consecutive Ulster finals 2013, 14, 15. Michael Murphy never scored from play. Barely got a touch in any of them. Now, nor did Vinny. Probably between the two of them, they probably kicked the ball a half a dozen times in the 3 games. But Vinny just knew how to mark him. He knew the discipline that was needed to just stay on his shoulder, contact all the time, shadow him every inch of clonus, making sure that he's between himself and the goals at all times and not letting him do that wee sort of step off, that wee separation that Billy McMahon talked about yesterday. Armagh didn't have anyone willing to do that. Willing to do that sort of really thankless job for
totally
full 70 minutes.
Yeah, it's a selfless job.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the other example of it was, do you remember Aidan O'Mahony in the 2014 All-Ireland final? I know for a fact that Kerry got a bit of advice from Monaghan for that game in terms of how to counter Donegal, and that was one of the things that was advised. Get somebody that's willing to sacrifice themselves for the team to do a job of Murphy. Somebody that's physical enough, someone that's, you might lose a whole pile in terms of play, and that's not to be unfair to either Vinny or Aidan O'Mahony, but you're not going to put like a Gooch or a Declan O'Sullivan doing it, if you know what I mean. Put somebody that's willing to stick to that task and sees the value in doing that job well. Aidan O'Mahony done it. That was arguably the winning of the 2014 All-Ireland final for Kerry. Vinny doing the job got us our 2 Ulster titles in 13 and 15. Unfortunately, Armagh didn't have somebody to do the same. And they had plenty of players that could have done that. Probably it just didn't seem like it was set out. So maybe they didn't expect Murphy to be at the level that he is, that he was able to have that impact. And it sort of maybe caught them a wee bit unawares. But that's not a great excuse either, because there was plenty of signs going into the game that potential was there. Now, that he had it for so long and so often probably caught everybody by surprise, but it was a phenomenal performance in all respects.
Just on it, Dick, like the mirror and parallels between 11 and 12 and 24 and 25 for Donegal. McGuinness went after league promotion in 11. He went after the Ulster title. He got both. He went after the Ulster title again in 12. And they went on, lifted Sam. He's went after the exact same since he came back. They've 2 Ulster titles in a row now. Like they're right there anyway. Now, aren't they, for the ultimate prize? And you're thinking maybe that calm and influence of having Murphy back just when things went a little bit awry in the All-Ireland semi-final last year, when they had themselves in a really good position, that could ultimately be the difference at the end of the year. They're right there anyway.
Well, and I said it on this podcast before and wrote about it. Jimmy McGuinness came back to win an All-Ireland. Like, Donegal don't need any more Ulster titles. It's not that they don't need any more. They value them unquestionably, but he came back seeing that there was a potential to win an All-Ireland with that team, but he equally knew from last year that he wasn't going to do it without a Michael Murphy. And he moved heaven and earth, obviously, during the winter to get him back. And there was a commitment there to that Murphy. It wasn't just a case of rocking up and getting a subs jersey and making a sort of an impact sub role. It was like, no, we need you all in here. We need you on the pitch for the 60, 70 plus minutes. And I suppose Sunday or Saturday evening was the sort of the result of that work and commitment that probably started last September or whenever it was, that conversation. That was not at the end point, because that's only half of the journey. But it's like this: they needed to probably see that performance from Murphy to give them the confidence that now that, right, that's Ulster done. Now it's about winning an All-Ireland, and we have a Michael Murphy fit and at the level that we need, like it was in 2012 and a few other near missed opportunities in 14, to lead this team, because there's a hell of a lot of good young players coming behind him. And listen, I was listening. It was funny listening to McGuinness and Mark Saybottom interviewed after.
Brilliant, wasn't it?
I was very good. Like, Mark's gas. Like, I know Mark, like, you wouldn't know what's going to come out of the office. He once called me the bloody Clerkinator coming off the bench in Cavan. I said, for the love of Jesus, that's stuck since. But anyway, and listen, Jim's very good in terms of his humility in some respects about putting it back to the players. But listen, there's no question, like, his impact and what he's able to do with that group of players and the influence that he has. Like, you have to remember where Donegal had fallen to. Like, Donegal were pretty much in rag order there for a few years. Like, Down gave them a fair beating in Uri a couple of years ago in the Ulster Championship. They got relegated back. Murphy had gone. A lot of players hadn't been involved. Ryan McHugh had stepped away. Owen McHugh had gone. There was a lot of players that you got the sense that, right, that's that Donegal team sort of wrapped up and they'll rebuild, but it was going to take them a few years to come back. And then McGuinness has been able to turn it around in a relatively short space of time to have them back at the top of the tree. Like that's a phenomenal achievement for a manager. You know?
I think this rebuild talk is gas at times, because it can be, if you have the right people steering the ship, that can happen remarkably quickly. Yeah. Like awfully, I just even thinking from my own county's point of view, like we were at the bottom of the barrel and all of a sudden we got our executive in order and it was been steered really well by Dignan and a few more, and it can turn really quickly. And the same thing has happened in Donegal, and as you say there, his ultimate aim is to win All-Ireland, and Murphy's ultimate aim, that's why he came back, was to win All-Ireland. And I'd say the work he had to do in the off season, I'd say, like I only watched The Last Dance again for about the 15th time the other day. I watch it, like nip in for 15 minutes and then watch the next 15. Over the course of about a month, you watch it all over again. But you're kind of thinking about how Jordan had to reshape his body after going to baseball and then coming back from baseball to basketball, and I'm sure Murphy had to do that as well. And even he's not the man-child from 2012. He's not this big, huge guy. He's a lot slimmer. He's a lot more mobile now. But the innate kind of power is still there. And it's going to be fascinating to see where they end up this year. Just from an Armagh point of view, you mentioned maybe some of the shortcomings and maybe not sacrificing someone on him. They still, like, it's amazing. They still haven't been beaten in regulation time in something like 3 years in a championship game. It's all penalties or extra time or whatever. They're still so close. And ultimately, what happened last year could easily end up happening again. And a certain Rian O'Neill rocked in with them on Sunday as well. And he's going to be a massive player going forward into the rest of the championship.
No, absolutely. Like it's very tough on Armagh to have to sit now and listen to the likes of ourselves trying to reverse engineer reasons why they didn't win the game. Like again, 3 Ulster finals in a row beaten in extra time. Mother of Jesus! Like what? Like that's just down to luck. There's no deficiency in the team because there's so many instances in a play or scores for and against that on average, it should you should get the rub of the green in one of those games, and they've got none of them, and must be desperately disappointing for them. Now, obviously, they have the All Ireland in the bag that sort of softens that blow, but I know like McGeaney and all those players would dearly love an Ulster medal, and they deserve one. People say, "Oh, you don't deserve anything, you go out and win it." Like they do deserve one now at this stage. They've done enough. They've been in enough finals. They've gone down the straight with great teams to get it. They just sort of fell short again. And the finest of margins, you look at McFadden's goal, just sort of swung a leg at the top corner, like something you'd see in Match of the Day. But like another 10 times that ball doesn't go in the net, whereas Armagh's chances sort of clip the post. Like, that's not down to anything but just sort of luck and misfortune. So desperately tough on them. But yes, they're sort of a wee bit short stacked at the minute with some of their sort of top players from last year. They're going to need them back. It's a different game now. They have to sort of go through a tough All-Ireland series now, and to win an All-Ireland, even coming out of the group, you're going to have to beat 3 bloody good teams to win an All-Ireland, and Armagh are going to need all their best players back because they're just that marginally short against to win an All-Ireland and even to win an Ulster title. That they had that extra margin last year to get them over those tight games against like Kerry and Galway in the final. So great to see Rian O'Neill back. Great for him personally. It was always a sort of an unfortunate sort of subplot to Armagh, especially after last year. So it was great to see him in the stand. Now hopefully we can see him back on the pitch because like the new game's just made for him. Like Jesus, totally. 2 pointers, my God! Like you talk about small margins, he's at least. I always sort of break players down. What's their impact on a team if they're in the team or not. Some players are quite neutral. Like let's be honest, you can sort of replace them in and out, and the team's not really going to suffer. The boy off the bench is going to do as good a job on them. Boys like Rian O'Neill adds at least 2 or 3 points to a team. Better. That's it. That's the influence he can have. He can get scores that nobody else can. He can get, especially now, 2 pointers. Like he was getting 1 pointers from those distance. Now they're worth 2. So we'll see where his fitness is. I don't know, has he been keeping fit? Is he like the pace of the game now is not for the faint-hearted? So if he hasn't been doing work, it'll be difficult for him to get up to the pace. Maybe it'd be an impact sub role. we'll see. But good for Armagh, good for the game that he's back.
You mentioned the quality of games they have coming as well. He'll have plenty of time and he'll have 210 minutes plus, maybe the guts of about 225 minutes in that group stage. It'll be interesting to see how much he plays, but I'd say he'll get quickly back up to the pace again if he's exposed to those minutes. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Dick, you touched on the kind of melee after. It was literally seconds after the final whistle, from the footage, which maybe won't be able to be used by the Colin Keys had in our paper today, that won't be able to be used by the CCCC. But like there is an onus on players to be gracious in victory and defeat, and that's just not the right way to win. And I'm not condoning the reaction, but it's the reaction of the Armagh bench or whoever was involved there. But it's a very natural reaction as well when someone shoves something in your face too. So both parties are to blame. One party set it off and the other party reacted to it. But if the first party doesn't do what he does, as in the Donegal player, every action has a reaction. It wouldn't have happened had he not done that. It'll be interesting to see what happens as a result of this, because if they can't use the footage, it's going to be difficult to react. But if they can, and they can put some sanctions or suspensions in place, it will be the ultimate deterrent for it not to happen again in any other scenario.
Yeah, listen, at a simple level, it was not good. And I'd say both teams, managers, players involved are a bit embarrassed that happened. Yeah. That just shouldn't happen. Like, there's no point. There's no excuse for it. There's no excuse that the Donegal player, that's the way he behaved after winning. No excuse for that, and certainly no excuse for the Armagh player that sort of charged the field and hit him. You can't do either. Now, we'll not get into who was the most wronged in it. It's a worrying thing that any player would think they can charge the field and draw a box like that either. Like the golden and the gamesmanship, that's not something that doesn't happen at times, Mike. We've all played in games that there's a bit of that, fist pumping into the stand or fist pumping. You see plenty of that. I'd say if you actually look back over the course of the game, who got a point? Somebody got a point for Armagh, if you remember it. In the second half, was it Ross McQuillan? It was Ross McQuillan, got a point in the second half on the town side. He fisted it and he continued his run and goaded Sean Patton. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah.
Like, didn't need to do that, but that happens. Fine. Now, Sean Patton wouldn't have been legitimate for Sean Patton to turn around and hit him a box for doing it.
Yeah.
So at the same time, we can't say it was okay for the Armagh player or the sub, whoever was involved, to come out and deck the Donegal player. You just can't do that. Okay. So I think, listen, let it go through due process. I think there needs to be a bit of an example made. Yeah, you can worry about footage and all the rest. I'd nearly be sort of looking for forgiveness rather than permission on that one. Let's let the fines be there, and then if the counties want to challenge them because the footage that clearly shows the players involved wasn't technically legitimate, we'll let them take that on, but the players deserve to be sort of punished for that, because it was very unsightly, and like, to have a brawl and have the managers having to get involved to separate it, that's shocking. I'd say both, because that's the sort of thing that can explode on the pitch.
Well, it easily could have, Dick. Think of the amount of people that were on the pitch.
Absolutely. And supporters, and let's be honest, at that stage you're in even full of drink and all sorts, and the emotions are high. That's the tinderbox sort of environment that things can kick off. So, if there isn't an example made of players, the players involved in this, there's nothing to say that mightn't happen again, or there certainly won't be a deterrent. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see.
I'd be removing red tape there now.
Oh, absolutely.
Making sure that some sort of sanctions are put in place. Dick, the Leinster final on Sunday, it's just such a novelty to, like, I was off on Sunday because I'd worked on Saturday, and it just building up to it all day, and then you see what's going on in Croke Park, and you can almost feel the telly kind of reverberating back at you, and you can see the amount of people that are there, the colour that's there, the buzz that's there, and the excitement around it, and it kind of lived up to the hype as well, and it went right down right down the clutch, and it was so fascinating at the end. And boys can say, and people can say what they like about the keep ball at the end, but there's so much jeopardy involved in that as well.
Oh, I was screaming at the telly. I was like, you asked me, young fella, I was roaring at the telly about Louth going back, and I said, Jesus, dude, just get it. The last play, that the only thing that could cost Louth that game was a goal from Meath. And what did Louth do? Bring the ball the whole way back into the 13. I was like, what mother? Anyway, like, I was raging, didn't get it. I had an under 12 team up at a tournament in Crossmaglen all day on Sunday morning from like 9 to. If I had got away a wee bit earlier, I would have got home. But we progressed well, thankfully, to the semi final, and it was too late to get down the road for the match in Croker. So I just got home and I was exhausted and sat up with a beer and just enjoyed it. Like, I've a lot of connections. I lived in Drogheda for about 8 years back in the day when I was working, Mike. So a lot of Louth people, a lot of Meath people, and I knew a lot of people going to the game. And I was working there in 2010, and I knew the ill feeling that sort of lingered from that. So, like, I was supporting Louth. That was sort of me interest in sort of laying it. Even though I know a lot of good Meath people, and I was just so delighted for them. Like, they didn't play well, and I'd say if they look back, they sort of got away playing, at maybe about sort of 70%. Like, they relied on a few moments of magic from the likes of young Lennon and then Sam Mulroy sort of stepping up when it looked like, sort of the occasion got to him, and me sort of, as we sort of alluded to, Mike, that were they going to be able to bring the same level of intensity and energy that they did against Dublin, and they didn't.
Now, they were the better team, Dick, for 45 minutes, but the goals really, really hurt them. Like, they should have been 7 or 8 up, probably, realistically.
Yeah, they were the better team. They hit that purple patch in the first half, and they get up. There's a bit of energy and pace in their play.
They looked like they were going to score every time they attacked.
They did, and they were moving fast, and now they're defending and relying on turnovers. But I thought Louth were poor and very laboured in the first half, and sort of relied on those sort of goals to keep them in the game. Like, they had what was the score at half time? 3 or something. 15, yeah, which is 6 scores in 35 minutes of football is a fairly low return on the scoreboard. And that kept them in the game, needless to say, because Meath were the better team. But it was more Louth were poor than Meath were great. It was a case then when Louth found a wee bit more around midfield and Sam Mulroy got his shooting boots on, that sort of Meath sort of came back to the pack a wee bit in terms of where they were at. And they stepped off, whether they were tired or where it was just a bit of an experience. Like, they showed far too little aggression and intensity in the tackle, pushing out, trying to turn Meath over in that last quarter when the game was there to be won. Like, they'd done enough to win that game, but they sort of handed it to Louth to go and win it, as opposed to go and try and win it themselves, which I'd say when they look back, they'll be disappointed with, because, as you say, look at their first half performance, the pace and energy that they had going forward, and they're able to create scores. Did very, very little of that in the second half, which is disappointing for them. But at the same token, they probably just don't have enough tar laid at this stage to sort of deserve a provincial title, and maybe that's a learning curve for them. Whereas Louth, that's their third final in a row.
They managed the game really well. Like, the
do, and big game experience. Like, Croke Park's a difficult place to play, very intimidating if you haven't been there before, and especially on finals day. And that's the first experience a lot of those Meath players would have had. Whereas even though they took, defeats to Dublin, Louth went through that and competed actually well against Dublin last year. So all that feeds into building your confidence and capacity to sort of see those games out in the way Louth did, that they seemed a bit more comfortable in the surroundings, whereas Meath sort of like a sprinter tightened a wee bit coming up to the line. Yeah,
the scenes in Drogheda and RD and these places, it's brilliant to see. Like, we've had 3 out of 4 provincial finals were top class entertainment, like, and real good results, and going right down. Like, it was brilliant. Listen, the last couple of years we've done not only give out about the provinces and whatever, and listen, it's probably still skewed going into the All-Ireland stages, but they've been 3 out of 4 brilliant finals.
Huge. And like the Louth one especially, like, because obviously in Connacht and Ulster, they're the top teams in the province, and still probably a bit of a reach for the other chasing teams. But whereas in Leinster, like, there's not too many teams in Leinster that wouldn't fancy that they could beat Louth. So like you have the likes of Westmeath, Kildare, obviously Meath,
Awfully.
who else? Offaly, Laois. If they can raise their game a wee bit. Um, it gives them hope, is what I'm sort of saying. It gives them, if the cards fall for you, that there's a pathway there to either get to a final or to win a provincial title, which is a huge thing for the province now going into next year. But I remember, just give me a second on this now. So 12 months ago, I was doing a bit of work for a client in Meath. Now, it was with a gentleman called Seamus Torres, who sadly passed away in the last 6 months. Hugely passionate Louth man, would have been very involved in this club and Louth GA. And Louth were going okay at the minute. I remember they were going down to play Dublin in the Leinster final. I says, he was a wee bit sort of despondent. I said, Jay, Louth just need to compete, right? Don't be going down there thinking they're going to win. Compete and keep improving and stay in the race, because there's a good panel of players. And he was asking me about Monaghan. They says the reason Monaghan succeeded, they kept in the race. They never give up. They never sort of, just when they had a few tough beatings or a few tough years that players retired or sort of took a step back, you stayed going. And you might know when it's going to happen, but the cards will fall for you. Something will happen that, an opportunity to win a provincial title will just sort of land on you. But if and that happened for Louth this year, right? Would they have beaten Dublin in Croke Park? Probably not, let's be honest. But they didn't have to. Meath done that job for them in Portlaoise. And that was sort of maybe the luck that benefited Louth in this occasion. But they stayed in the race. All those good players that had sort of bit by bit, layer by layer, had Durnan, Grimes, Burns, Samuel Roy. They all improved bit by bit to when that day came on Sunday. They were a better team and a better prepared team. A lot of other counties in that sort of middle ground, Mike, though some of those players might have retired or went travelling or taken a year out or whatever, that Louth team kept sort of building, even though it was a change over managers. And I sort of am just sad now for like Sachet. He passed away in the last 6 months suddenly, but he'd be looking down, with a big smile on his face, and a lot of Louth people who are hugely passionate. Jesus, there's a huge passion for GA or Gaelic football in Louth, Mike. You probably wouldn't be up to it, but they're very traditional county, going back to the All-Ireland wins in the 50s, and it's just great for them because they have put in the effort, they have put in the time over the last 3 or 4 years to get to that point.
Yeah,
it's delighted for them.
Yeah, what you say there is really interesting, because squads can sink or swim. They can get to a level and they can ease off and think it's never going to happen a small bit, or just not go after the little percents, or they can stay going after them. And you have to always have, like, even looking at teams down through history, and even the likes of Mayo that keep coming back, right. Teams that you have to just keep doing everything you can do, and sometimes it does just fall into place eventually,
very often the toughest place to be, I found over the years, Mike, was in that middle ground where you weren't at the top winning, and at which is quite easy because, geez, you're competing for Ulster titles, Division 1. How would you not want to get involved? That's not difficult to motivate players and management and supporters and all you need. Similarly at the bottom, when I started with Mon and we were at the bottom, that wasn't difficult because there wasn't a whole pile of commitment or effort, no expectations, and so it was. And a lot of those teams at the bottom, if they're being honest, it's not a big commitment at that level. And I'll challenge anyone that says it is. See the players that put in that wee bit more to get them to that middle ground, and they're in touching distance but keep getting knocked back, and they think they're making progress and they're not. They're like, God, why are we putting in this extra effort when we're still not going to get there? That can be tough. Yeah. And that's where Louth were for a couple of years, and that's where a lot of counties in the middle ground find themselves. Sometimes, as I say, you just got to stay in the race. You got to keep committing, and you never know when the cards will fall for you. But if you don't, if you take I would say the easy option, it's not an easy option to step away, but if you take that option, you'll never know. So I'm just delighted for all those Louth players that didn't sort of hand in their stripes when a lot of other players might have, and they got their just rewards.
Expect some angry calls and texts from teams down towards the lower echelons.
I was there. I know that. I know what Monaghan was like when we were in that, and it wasn't what Monaghan have liked in the last 15 years. So I think that there's that's another day's conversation in terms of everybody putting in the same effort and commitment. I'm sorry, they don't.
Just quickly, Dick, I want to just fly through the Tailteann Cup, because really quickly there's some real good storylines, like Joe Murphy coming in as Carlow manager, getting a huge win over Fermanagh at the weekend. Like, that was a massive win. He's only in the job probably for about 5 weeks at this stage. That was a huge one. Luke Loughlin firing 117 for Westmeath. The old High Rocks, or whatever he's doing outside of football as well, is obviously doing him no harm. And the other story which I thought was interesting was Philly Ryan, the tip manager, got hip surgery there a couple of weeks ago, so he actually wasn't on the sideline in Tubbercurry when they played Sligo at the weekend. He was watching it via stream and been incommunicado with the rest of the management team, which I can't imagine how difficult and frustrating maybe that must have been at times. But lots of interesting stories from the Tailteann Cup over the weekend. Offaly getting a good win over Wicklow as well, and hopefully from our point of view anyway, stopping what has been this slide that we've experienced anytime we've gone near the qualifiers or the Tailteann Cup as well. Anything in particular, Dick, stand out from the second tier football?
Well, I think what you're looking for in the Tailteann Cup in the early stages is who's engaged, who's interested in this, and who's sort of maybe just wrapped it up for the summer. And you can sort of tell that sort of early doors. Like, if you remember, was it last year, the year before, Mike Offaly sort of got hammerings, and they sort of just folded their tent early doors, and you just sort of said, well, they're just not interested. And probably players went travelling or whatever. You're not find out because nobody probably cared to report too much on the Tailteann Cup team. Certainly those that are getting beaten. So you're looking for teams that are obviously sort of showing an interest. Offaly is definitely one of them. Laois and Kildare. Like Kildare, in fairness, like a couple of weeks ago, we were sitting here commending Leitrim for their efforts in bringing sort of Mayo to the wire. So Leitrim aren't a bad team, and Kildare put 36 points on them. So that shows that Brian Flanagan and that set of Kildare players are treating the competition with good respect. So there's enough teams now there already after the first weekend of action to sort of say, you know what, this could be a good competition this year. There's enough teams, and even Westmeath putting a big score up against Antrim, that they all want to go and win it. And they sort of see now, looking at Down last year, God, we win this, we're in the All-Ireland series, and we can compete in that because the gap isn't just as big. There's those couple of teams at the top of the Tailteann Cup level, like I would expect Down to compete this year. They'll say, it's go and win this now. It's only a couple of months' effort of even that, and sets us up for All-Ireland football next year. So it's a great carrot, and it's great to see teams obviously putting their best foot forward in the early doors. So hopefully there's more of that. And then when you get to the playoff stages, there should be some great games in it.
Yeah, great stuff, Dick. Thanks a million. We'll be back again next week to review all the action. Another crazy busy GA weekend coming up. But Dick, thanks a million for your time.